Welcome to Island Crimes and Mysteries. And now, it's time to join your host Nules for another episode.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're a returning listener, I want to say a big thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, welcome. It's great to have you on board. Right, everyone, before we start today, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever had a thirst for those eerie and overlooked tales from the past? If you have, then you need to check out Dark History Podcast by Rob Bradley. This is a bi-monthly show that takes you on a journey through the grim, harrowing and gruesome events that often go untold. From uncovering the vile acts of history's most evil figures to delving into historical true crime and unsolved mysteries, Dark History Podcast is your chance to explore the sinister side of history. It's an enthralling and chilling experience that you won't want to miss. Here's Rob to tell you all about it.
In the shadows of history lies tales of unimaginable darkness. From the hidden atrocities to the sinister secrets buried by time. Join me, Rob Bradley, as we delve into the depths of humanity's dark past, uncovering the chilling stories that history hoped you'd forgotten.
Dark history.
Prepare yourselves for the macabre and the mysterious as we journey through tales of tyranny, betrayal and bloodshed. Discover the forgotten massacres, the twisted minds of infamous villains, and the haunting echoes of crimes that shook the world. This isn't just history, this is dark history. Join me in the exploration of the darkest chapters of our past. Listen now on your preferred podcast provider, if you dare.
So head on over to Rob's Dark History Podcast, and I'm telling you, if history is your thing as well as true crime, you will not be disappointed. He has podcasts there on everything from the Bermuda Triangle to H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer, to even dark stories from New York City. And that's just tipping the iceberg. So head on over to Rob, and yeah, I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed. Now back to today's podcast.
These women were here, now they're gone. The question is, where are they?
Today's case takes us to Dundalk in County Louth, which is situated not too far from the Northern Ireland border and an equal distance between Belfast and Dublin. It is here in Dundalk in 1997 that we would find a young 17-year-old girl called Ciara Breen. Born on the 31st of March 1979, Ciara lived in a small terraced house on Bachelor's Walk in Dundalk town centre with her mother, Bernadette Breen. The street where they lived was just off the main road and surrounded by narrow lanes. They had moved there the previous year. Prior to that, they had lived with Bernadette's parents, which was just around the corner after the breakup of her short-lived marriage to Ciara's dad. Ciara's family had gone back generations in the town, with her great-grandfather and great-granduncle representing the town as TDs, ministers in the Irish Parliament known as the Dáil. Ciara's father had moved to America after the breakup and before Ciara was even born, and she had never met him. He was due back in the country for a wedding, and plans were being made for a potential meeting with Ciara while he was at home. Mother and daughter were extremely close and had grown even closer after they moved to Bachelor's Walk, often staying up late into the night chatting, and sometimes Ciara would even go into her mother's bed and they would chat until they fell asleep. If Ciara woke up in the middle of the night, she would go back then into her own room.
I always told her never to be afraid to tell me anything. And I said, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Ciara. It all depends on what you say. I might lose it and start shouting, and but I will calm down. And when I do calm down, I will be on your side. But you're going to have to give me 5 minutes if it's bad to have a rant. I always told her that. Mm-hmm. I thought we had a very open relationship. Okay. We could talk about anything. We really, really could. One example. Shortly before Ciara disappeared, I went to collect her from her night out, and she came in. She always had her wee sambo. That's a sandwich when she came in. And this particular night she didn't want it. I said, okay. She said, well, I'm going to bed, Mum, night-night. I said, okay. I said, I'm just going to sweep the fireplace and everything. And she came back down and she says, Mum. And I went, yes, Pat. And she goes, no, nothing's okay. I'll talk to you in the morning. I went, okay. I was kind of busy and I wasn't, So I went to go down to the kitchen to turn off the light. And she was at the top of the stairs and she goes, Mom, like this. And I went, what is it? I know there's something. What is it? And she said, I had a Ritz. I don't. And I went, what's a Ritz thing? Oh, Mommy, it's a beer. It's like a lager. I went, that's okay. I thought drugs. I thought she took something. So she went, are you sure? I went, Ciara, you're nearly 18. I said, just because I don't drink, I don't expect you not to. Just be very, very careful. And she ran down the stairs and hugged me and said, thanks, Mum.
Ciara was described as a girl with a trusting nature. She was quiet and a bit naive. She suffered from low self-esteem and became very self-conscious after being bullied as a teenager, her mother said. As a way to help Ciara through her issues, her mother had booked a trip to Disneyland. Ciara appeared more settled when they returned home and had gathered the courage to start making new friends. Bernadette, though, was not too happy with her choice of friends and would speak to Ciara about it. But Ciara, wanting to see the good in everyone, was willing to give them a chance.
Ciara, a year before, had fallen in with, I don't like to say a certain crowd, but she did. It's not that I didn't like them. They were too streetwise for her. Ciara had no street smarts. She hadn't. She was overprotected growing up, which was my fault. And her dad wasn't there, so I put everything into her, I stopped going out. Everything I bought, everything I did, everything I went was all geared towards her. I was always there. The poor wee devil never had a chance to get street smarts. You know what I mean? She was protected. I was there the whole time. You can overprotect, I think. And I think I did.
Despite running away with a friend to Northern Ireland before returning a few days later, Ciara overall had settled and was not causing too many issues for her mother. And even though Ciara had improved since her trip to Disneyland, she still had some lingering issues with her self-esteem, particularly her teeth. And her mother duly booked her an appointment with her dentist to have this problem sorted in an effort to help Ciara gain more confidence. As her 18th birthday was approaching, Bernadette decided, as the first trip to Disneyland had been such a success, she would surprise Ciara with another holiday to the amusement resort. She had left school at 16 when she was in 5th year, so she did not sit her leaving certificate examination. By 1997, she had enrolled at a local education centre as she wanted to learn some new skills that would help her get the job of her dreams in the future. She decided to do a computer course. Her dream job was to become a beautician. Bernadette felt her daughter was starting to come into her own after leaving school and starting the computer course. Wednesday, the 12th of February, was like any other night in the Breen household. Ciara and her mother had enjoyed a nice evening meal at a local cafe called Roma Restaurant before returning home at around 6:45 p.m. Ciara then watched Home and Away while Bernadette did a bit of housework. When Bernadette was finished with the housework, she sat with Ciara by the fire and they both started watching the film Circle of Friends. This was a film Ciara loved, so she decided to also tape it. According to her mother, she got the tape ready. She wrote on the tape, Circle of Friends, Ciara Breen's tape, do not touch. Chris O'Donnell, I love you, before putting the tape into the recorder. After Circle of Friends finished, they watched the film Bad Boys. When that was finished, they headed upstairs and sat on Ciara's mother's bed and had a chat before saying goodnight, after which Ciara went to her own bedroom. When Ciara's mother said goodnight to her daughter just after midnight as she went to her own bedroom, little did she know that this would be the last time she would ever see her daughter. Bernadette had a lot on her mind as she was getting ready for bed. The following day, she had an appointment at the Blackrock Clinic to receive the results of a biopsy. She had been dealing with a few health issues in the past few months. Bernadette would later say that Ciara was also very worried about what the results may be, and they had discussed it before going to bed that night.
So we went to bed, and she was lying on the bed with me, which I have to say is not unusual, because she usually did every night. We'd have a wee chat. I'd say 5 nights out of the 7 during the week. And she was lying there, and she just turned around to me. She said, "Are you worried about tomorrow, Mum?" And I went, "Not one bit." "Why, are you?" She said, "Well, if you're not worried, I'm not worried." And I said, "Don't worry about anything, pet. You're not getting rid of me that easy." How apt that sentence would become. But she said, "Mum, do you want me to go with you?" And I went, "No, Ciara, you go on ahead to your course." I said, I'll go on ahead up and come home. I said, "I'm not worried about it. Grandad's just coming up." I said, "It'll be fine, don't worry." And she said, "That I'll have the fire and all lit when you come home." I said, "Thanks very much." So she got off the bed, she gave me a kiss goodnight and a hug, and she stood at the door and she said, "Mommy, don't you worry about tomorrow. Night, I love you." And I went, "I love you too, sweetheart." Sweet Pea, actually. I always called her Sweet Pea. And I said, "Don't you worry about it. Have a good night's sleep." "I will, Mum. See you in the morning. I love you. Night." That was it.
At approximately 2 a.m. in the early hours of the 13th of February, Bernadette awoke to use the bathroom and looked in on her daughter as she passed her room. She noticed Ciara was not in her bed. Her bed was still made and had not been slept in at all. She went back to check had Ciara gone into her room, but she was not there either. She assumed Ciara was unable to sleep and had gone back downstairs to watch more TV. When Bernadette went downstairs, she noticed a window was on the latch in the living room of their house. Bernadette was certain she had checked all the windows and doors before going to bed, and they had all been locked. It is assumed Ciara snuck out through this window and had left it on the latch for when she got home. This window faced out onto the street. Ciara had been known to sneak out of the house at night in the past for pre-arranged meetups with friends, and her mother assumed that was her reason for sneaking out on this particular night. The frequency of her sneaking out at night had increased in the previous few months, but she had always returned home. Mother and daughter would have regular words about her sneaking out at night. Bernadette had laid down a few ground rules in an attempt to keep her daughter safe. If Ciara was meeting her friends, she would be dropped off and collected. She also had to ring her mother before she left for school, and again when she got home if her mother was not there. And if Ciara did not adhere to these rules, the consequences were that she would be grounded for the weekend. Despite all the new rules, Ciara continued to sneak out of the house at night. Assuming Ciara would again come home at some point that night, her mother sat in the living room awaiting her return to give her a telling off. She waited, and as every hour passed by, she became more and more anxious. Then the sun started to rise on a new day. Bernadette, at this stage, was growing increasingly worried. She decided to ring the Blackrock Clinic and cancel her appointment. She spoke with the receptionist, who explained to her that the consultant was very anxious to speak with her in person. So with that, Bernadette set out on the journey to Blackrock with her father, who was giving her a lift, and hoped that when she returned home, Ciara would be home. She told her father that Ciara had snuck out of the house the night before and was still not back by the time she had left for her appointment. When they returned to the house, to their disappointment, the house was silent. Bernadette had no choice now but to contact the Gardaí. She did this around 6 p.m. This had been a horrendous day for poor Bernadette, as the news she had received from the consultant was not good news. He had given her the news no one wants to hear. Her biopsy had showed a malignancy. She had cancer. Bernadette explained the situation to the Gardaí and told him that the clothes she had been wearing prior to going to bed were not in her room. So her assumption was that Ciara was wearing those clothes when she snuck out of the window that night. These included a pair of dark blue jeans, a black leather jacket, a wine sweatshirt, and a white t-shirt depicting a girl surrounded by lifeguards that had her own face superimposed onto it. She got the unusual t-shirt when she visited SeaWorld on her trip to Florida with her mother a few months previous. She would have worn this t-shirt under her wine sweatshirt. She also had a Mickey Mouse watch on her that she had purchased on that same trip. It was a limited edition watch commemorating the 1994 World Cup in Florida. She did not take anything else with her. Her money, passport, credit union book, and all her other clothes were still in her bedroom. She literally left the house with only the clothes she was wearing on her back. The following day, the 14th of February, the Gardaí commenced a full-scale investigation into Ciara's disappearance. They started interviewing her friends and people who would have been in contact with Ciara in the days leading up to her disappearance. They were quickly getting a picture of her movements and contacts in the days prior. And within a few days, Gardaí had a prime suspect in their sights after getting some very interesting information from neighbours and Ciara's friends. According to these friends, Ciara had been befriended by an older man. Bernadette had actually hunted this man from the front garden when she found him talking to her daughter and had overheard the conversation in which he asked Ciara if she was going out with anyone. Bernadette, who was 38 at the time, said he was nearer to her age, which disgusted her. She told the man to leave immediately and stay away from her daughter, as he was significantly older than her. Gardaí would later find out that Ciara was seeing this man for a significant amount of time prior to her disappearance, maybe even up to a year. Ciara's friends also said that the man in question had been watching the group of friends at a takeaway restaurant a few days before she went missing. They said they had spotted him on a number of occasions watching them from afar. He had even approached them a few times. The friends got a bad vibe from him and would describe him as a creep and stated he made them feel very uneasy, but would say Ciara appeared unfazed by his presence. On another occasion in the restaurant, the friends witnessed Ciara having a long conversation with this man and even overheard him ask her if he could see her later. She told him she would sneak out of her house when her mother went to bed. This account by her friends has never changed over the years, and we have to bear in mind that he was in his mid-30s and Ciara was 17. According to neighbours of the Breens, this man was seen on several occasions hanging around the area, and to them it appeared that Ciara knew him. As I said, Bernadette had confronted him outside the house and had told him to leave. She had her suspicions that Ciara was sneaking out that night to meet him. But she was unaware about the fact that he was watching and interacting with Ciara when she was with her friends. And she was certainly unaware that she may have been meeting him for a long period of time prior to her going missing. All this information would only become known to Bernadette after Ciara went missing. And she would also find out that he had been meeting her at the college where she was doing her computer course. Gardaí conducted a forensic investigation of Ciara's bedroom and the living room, but nothing was found. The window that was on the latch had not been forced open, so it was assumed Ciara had opened it from the inside to climb out onto the street. The only fingerprints lifted from the window belonged to Ciara. Ciara's front door key was found behind a radiator that was under the window, and it was assumed that it had fallen out of her pocket as she had climbed out. Gardaí also conducted a large number of planned searches which stretched across the border to Warrenpoint, but no sign of Ciara was found. Gardaí had also been made aware that she had met a boy at a disco in Kilkeel, over the border. This boy was tracked down but had not seen Ciara since that night when they'd met at the disco. The police in Northern Ireland were asked to investigate on their side of the border in light of the time she had spent there with a friend. But they also came up empty-handed. Despite all the times she'd snuck out of the house, Gardaí felt that on this occasion it was different, and the fact she had not returned was not a voluntary decision. She was very much aware of her mother's important appointment with the consultant the following day. She hadn't taken anything with her, and she was due to meet her own father for the first time in years. Gardaí checked out all the alleged sightings of Ciara in the days and weeks after her disappearance, and one by one they are eliminated from the investigation. So why hadn't this prime suspect been arrested? In 1998, Ciara's case was upgraded to murder, and as it was now under the remit of Operation Trace, it was out of the hands of the Gardaí in Dundalk. Detectives with Operation Trace decided to concentrate initially on the statements from her friends about this older man who was always hanging around on the periphery when they were out socialising and had been witnessed on several occasions talking to Ciara and asking her inappropriate questions considering the age gap. He had also been seen hanging around near her house and had generally given the friends group an uneasy feeling. When detectives from Operation Trace spoke with the original investigating Gardaí, they said that the friends in question were known to them and had been involved in petty crimes from time to time. Because of this, they were reluctant to believe their statements about the man and felt the teenagers would be reluctant to help them with their inquiries. This did not stop Operation Trace detectives from re-interviewing the friends, and when they did, their statements did not change from their original ones. They were all adamant that what they had originally said was correct, and as each one of them recounted the conversations they had overheard between this man and Ciara, they all remained consistent with their recollections throughout. These interviews took place in September 1999, and after this, and based on the information they had collected, the decision was made to arrest this man. The big problem they would face was securing a conviction for murder when they had no body. They could not even prove that Ciara was actually deceased. Nevertheless, he was arrested on the 12th of September 1999 and taken to Dundalk Garda Station to be detained and interviewed. It was felt by those investigating Ciara's case that it was not associated with any of the other missing women from that decade in which Operation Trace were investigating the possibility of a serial killer at large in the Leinster area. Detectives felt Ciara's disappearance was more to do with an alleged predator ring of children and teenagers that was suspected to be in operation in the Dundalk area at the time, of which they thought this man was a part of. When arrested, this man was caring for an elderly relative. He refused to answer any questions that were put to him and denied even knowing Ciara. Frustratingly, detectives ended up having to release him as despite being sure this was their man, they did not have enough evidence to make a conviction stick. In December 2014, Crime Call aired a segment on Ciara's disappearance, asking for people's assistance and for any information that could help lead to either Ciara's whereabouts or to the person responsible for her disappearance. About 5 weeks after the segment aired, Gardaí would receive a letter. This letter was written anonymously, naming the prime suspect as the person responsible. They would go on to receive another letter believed to be from the same person. In light of this letter, Gardaí brought ex-girlfriends of this man in for questioning. Some had been aware that he had been in a relationship with Ciara, with others stating she was not the only teenager he had been in a relationship around that time. Others stating that he was often very violent and abusive. On the 21st of April 2015, he was rearrested and brought to Drogheda Garda Station, and again, despite being very emotional, refused to answer any questions about his relationship with Ciara. The interviewing detective said on this occasion he believed he was close to confessing, stating, "He started putting his hands to his head when I asked, 'Did he kill her?' He was falling to his knees and he was sobbing. I knew he was going to come out with it. Then his solicitor called and wanted to see him, after which it was no comment. he was released again without charge. On the 18th of August in the same year, a search was conducted of over 2 acres of bogland known as Balmer's Bog by a swamp near McArdle Brewery in Dundalk, following a tip-off from a member of the public. This person said they witnessed the suspect chasing Ciara along the railway tracks in the early hours of the morning on the day she disappeared. The search would continue until the 9th of September, and again, nothing of note was found. The suspect was witnessed by both locals and Gardaí periodically showing up at the search site and watching what was going on. Then in 2017, the Garda Serious Crimes Review Unit directed the team at Operation Trace to hand over the case files to them for review. By now, the prime suspect was in his 50s. In July of 2017, he was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol and in possession of illegal drugs in Dundalk and taken to the Garda station. He would die a short time after being arrested at the station. A subsequent autopsy would show he had a significant amount of illegal drugs in his system. Then in June of 2018, Ciara's mother Bernadette would pass away at Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda, never knowing what had happened to her daughter. Bernadette had always believed that Ciara's remains were somewhere within that 16 acres of bogland that had been previously searched, and said the people who had provided this information to the Gardaí initially had to know a bit more. In one of her final interviews before she died, Bernadette said, "Ciara has been lying out there on her own for 20 years. I know she is with God. I have a strong faith, but I'm her mother. To me, she is on her own. She has no one to come to talk to her. She has no one to lay a flower. She has no one to cry at her graveside or anywhere else. That's why I'm hopeful that they will allow her to come home, to the people that love her. And that's why I'm thanking you in advance and why I know you will come forward." No one ever did come forward. Bernadette is not the only one who is convinced she is in that bogland somewhere. A retired Garda detective who was on the original case also believes this to be true. He regrets every day that they could not find her and said he regularly apologises to her for not having found her. He is also convinced that the prime suspect was the killer. But after arresting him twice, the DPP would say on both occasions after reviewing the evidence that there was just not enough for a conviction. He said this man used to bring Ciara for walks down the railway line and bring her drinking. She would have been in her school uniform at the time. Balmer's Bog, as it is known, is where Ciara was last seen. Adding, unfortunately, she met the wrong man that night and things didn't go the way maybe she had planned. He went on to say that they were able to establish that he had said to people, "I could put someone in that bog and they'd never be found." The suspect had also allegedly said about another young girl he had been pursuing, "If I don't get what I want, I'm going to put her in the bog with the other one." A witness had come forward in 2015 who said the suspect's friend had told him that the suspect was with Ciara that night down in Balmer's Bog. Detectives also had that witness who had seen her being chased by the suspect. These witness statements were what led to that search of the bog. Detectives had concentrated on that 2 acres where they believed they would find her, going through it with a fine-tooth comb. But unfortunately, more than 500 tons of soil had been illegally dumped there, and the forensic anthropologist said at the time this would have crushed any buried bones, making finding Ciara an impossibility. They had found a dress matching the description of one that Ciara had owned, but her mother said it was not the same as it had buttons and Ciara's one had a zip. The detective said that if Bernadette had said it was Ciara's dress, he would have had enough evidence to go back to the DPP, reflecting that it had always stuck with him how close they had got. He recalled how Bernadette had rung him when she had heard about the prime suspect's death. He said she was devastated. Her words, I'll never find out where my Ciara is now. His one regret on hearing that Bernadette had passed away was that he wasn't able to bring Ciara home to her so that she could bury her only child. To this day, he still believes there is at least one person still alive who has information on what really happened, and he has appealed to this person to come forward with that information. To date, this person has yet to come forward. Although the chief suspect has passed away and tragically Bernadette went to her grave still not knowing Ciara's fate, this case still needs to be concluded and the answers to what happened to Ciara that night need to be solved. Ciara, like all the other missing girls, deserve to be brought home to their remaining family. It breaks my heart always when I'm researching these missing persons podcasts to think of all the years of torment that these families go through when a family member disappears without trace. Their suffering is immense enough because the person is missing in the first place, but it never ends when the answers elude them for years. It does seem in Ciara's case that the investigating team have quite a lot of information, but are missing that one key piece of information that would lead to the conclusion of the case. And that is Ciara's remains. Without Ciara's body, I do fear, personally, that the case will never be solved. So if that one person that the detective was talking about is listening to this podcast, please do the honourable thing and give that vital piece of information to the Gardaí and give Ciara the dignity of a final resting place beside her mother Bernadette so they can both rest in peace and Ciara's remaining family can have peace of mind. You can do this by contacting Dundalk Garda Station on 042 9388 400, or you can contact the Garda Confidential line on 1800 666 111, or you can contact any Garda station. What a burden to be carrying on your shoulders for all these years. Wouldn't it be such a relief to know you provided that missing link and ended this nightmare for everyone involved?
So guys, that's it for today's episode of the Ireland Crimes and Mysteries podcast. Again, thanks for your listenership, and don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that auto download so you never miss an episode. Until the next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles, documentaries, and open source material that can be found on the web. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place.
You've been listening to Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. Join Nules for another episode, coming real soon. And keep up to date by following our social media sites, our YouTube channel, and our website, irelandcrimesandmysteries.ie.